Hey everyone, I'm Charlotte. Welcome to this talk for Recovery 2.0, Stories of Victory. My talk, I originally titled it Creating Space, as I find that's a big part of my recovery journey right now, is learning to find the space within myself and within my community to be part of recovery. And so as I titled it, but I also am thinking about it, a theme that I want to bring in this talk is doing the next right thing, as that has been a really big part of my recovery and a skill that I've gotten to learn and cultivate. So I'm zooming in from Charlotte, Vermont. My name is Charlotte, so Charlotte from Charlotte. And my sobriety date is August 16th, 2016. So I've just had a 5-year sobriety mark in drugs and alcohol. Before I got sober, I had been practicing yoga about the 5 years before finding sobriety, and that was kind of the catalyst for moving forward in my life, of learning to find a little more strength and stability. But yeah, I think I'll start from the beginning and then go into the beginning of my story. I'll try not to stay too far in any parts, but at the same time, I'm a little nervous to speak today. But at the same time, I feel so grateful for this opportunity to share where I'm at. And so practicing sharing where I am at today and what my journey has been, and allowing that to come through me, as that has been one of the greatest gifts of recovery, is just learning to be with myself, be with my community, be with all the different parts of myself without trying to edit or manipulate, but just allowing the energy to flow through. So here I am. I'm 32. I am a teacher, a yoga teacher, an art teacher, horseback riding teacher. I'm living in the house that I actually grew up in. It's a small farmhouse, but so I grew up here. And growing up, it was way different. I grew up with my mom and my sister. My parents divorced when I was a child, or like an infant. And my dad was in my life, but not in a kind of very stressed way. There was a long court case with a divorce, and he is definitely mentally ill. And so growing up, it was a lot of tension, going back and forth between houses that were a schedule that was court ordered. And so at a young age, I learned to disconnect from my emotions, because I never wanted to be where I was, or be in the, I felt unsafe a lot with my dad and with my mom. And so I'm I kind of learned to disconnect from my emotions and be separate from myself. And when I was about 10 or so, I started learning how to cope with food. And then about 12, I started to take sleeping pills that I found from my grandparents. I would stash away. And it started as just when I was at my dad's house, I would want to be, I would rather have be asleep than be awake, because that was the kind of situation. And so that kind of set me up for some struggles with addiction and eating disorders and self-harm, which I struggled with in my teen years. I went to a boarding school that I absolutely loved. I kind of created a sense of space and community, or a sense of family within my boarding school, but at the same time, because I got a little bit more connected and safer there, that's when all of my kind of tension started to come out, or just in the form of an eating disorder, bulimia. Developed that in 10th grade and started cutting, and started and so struggled a lot then, but soon I found drugs and alcohol, which were a socially acceptable way to find myself. And all those years I was really searching, just to feel myself, feel comforted, feel in control. And that's what alcohol and drugs gave me. And then I went to college in Colorado. I loved my college as well, but struggled a lot with alcohol and drugs, and was kind of always getting extensions for classes, or taking med leave, or ending up in the hospital with panic attacks or overdoses. I was a binge drinker, and I had a little breakdown when I was studying abroad and was hospitalized for a while. And that's when I started taking pharmaceuticals. So I kind of shifted my grabbing from pharmaceuticals or from alcohol and drugs to then finding another acceptable way to be in the world. So that lasted about 5 years. And then I went to an inpatient program for trauma at Sierra Tucson in Arizona. And that was a really wonderful, wonderful place and wake up call of just how to be in the world in a different way. It was being at Sierra Tucson was the first place that I felt like I was where I should be. It was like, first place I felt like I had belonged, and I made a lot of great connections with the staff there, the therapists, and the community. And that was my first taste of recovery. But I didn't yet admit that I had a problem with drugs and alcohol or eating, or I did, but I kind of pretended that it was all fine. And so then when I got out of Sierra Tucson, I was trying to navigate life, being now from inpatient to outpatient. I was 25 now, and I would find myself, was able to be sober for about a month, and then I would go back into binge drinking and smoking pot, and I was doing less drugs at this time, but I was still misusing pharmaceuticals, Adderall and Xanax. And it was a really hard place to be. But around then is when I also started practicing yoga. I took a 200-hour yoga training and started practicing with Sean Korn, and then found Tommy Rosen, Recovery 2.0 at Kripalu. And I wasn't yet sober, but I was realizing that there was that to be in the yoga practice, I was one of the first places that I felt safe without anything. Feeling safe within the community, being held by the space of the teacher and the other practitioners. Practicing yoga on my own was different, but being in the classes allowed me to feel a sense of safety. And so I had this, for about a year, I had this period where I'd go to a yoga workshop, weekend workshop. I would do a lot of healing and growth, and then I would come back and I would kind of spiral because I would be back in, I'd have these things that I'd opened up and then come back to my own life. And so then I got sober. I realized it was just I got sober. I was actually, my friend Drew is here, who was my first friend that helped bring me into, so he was sober. Sorry, Drew, I'm calling you out. And we were doing this dance program, and I was smoking and drinking, and I was a dancing lettuce leaf in Vermont in summer. It's called Farm to Ballet. We danced on the farms, told the story of a Vermont farm, and I had been trying to get sober for a while, but was scared, and then so connecting with a friend that was going to meetings and was sober was what helped me begin to walk into the rooms of AA. I remember my first meeting, I was so scared. I was trembling the whole time. Just being in that room made me have panic attacks. But at the same time, it was also a similar feeling of when I was at Sierra Tucson. I felt supported and loved by the people in the rooms. And so I got sober, began working with a sponsor. I did a 90 and 90. So 90 meetings in 90 days. And that was really helpful to help redirect some of my patterns. And at this point in my life, I had tried a lot of things in recovery with therapies, and I was still doing therapy and still doing my yoga practice, but I needed more. And so really grateful that AA came into my life then. And then so I worked with a sponsor with AA, and then realized that my binging and purging came back up. And so I found a sponsor that was recovered both from eating disorders and alcohol and drugs, and started working with her. And that was it was a little easier for me to give up the drugs and alcohol. It was still really hard, but having that fixation on food was something that I had developed at such an early age. And so that's when I worked with a sponsor. I worked with a sponsor very intensely for a year, working on just whenever I would find myself wanting to spiral with thoughts or with food, I would just do the 10-step prayer. So I'd ask I would express to her what was going on and ask God to help remove these uncomfortable feelings, then direct my attention to someone I could help. And that was really that. It feels like a miracle today to be able to be good with food, to be able to not be struggling with eating disorders, as that was like I just felt so chained to that for so long. But then, of course, there's the one and go to another deeper level, and that's deeper level. And throughout this time, I was practicing with Recovery 2.0, doing workshops a couple times a year, and with practicing with Y12SR. I lead yoga for 12-step recovery classes, and so that was a really big part of my community, combined with the AA. And through all of that, I learned how to create a God of my own understanding, as that the word God was so charged for me. I grew up, my dad was very religious, or kind of narcissistically religious, wanted us to believe his way of being, and would tell me that the devil was in my mom or people that were not following his way. So I had a lot of fear and resentment towards God. But both the combination of the 12 steps and working with yoga teachers who brought God and spirituality into the rooms was so helpful and such a gift. And so now where I am today is I am in a grad program, studying depth psychology and creativity. I'm teaching a lot, and I'm working an active program with ACA. So about a year and a half ago, when I was did a retreat with Tommy in this community at Joshua, is when I started realizing, talking to people, that ACA would be a good fit for me. And that program has ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families, has really provided so much support. And so working with my sponsor now, of learning how to kind of be with myself and befriend myself. For so long, I was trying to fit before recovery and during my recovery, and still now, trying to fit this role, trying to show up in the world a certain way, go to meetings certain times a week, practice in a certain way, because that's what my teachers and community do, and I see it works for them. And it's really helpful to have that support and to have that vision and that guidance. But at the same time, Tommy has done some Monday night talks about this in the past month, of learning to connect to your own heart and find your own voice. And so that's where I am right now with my recovery, is learning to let everything go besides what's true and what's present for me. And so sometimes that changes every day. I'm working in recovery, just working with trauma and PTSD from childhood. It's hard to sit still and hard to be with myself a lot. Being in a dissociated state is where I'm a lot more comfortable. And so learning to invite myself into being still, or being in movement, or just whatever whatever my energy is, whatever. So I guess instead of I have this word stillness, because I have this idea that I should meditate in a certain way. And while I like exploring different ways of meditation, and part of that is stillness, learning how to be with myself, I think, is my meditation right now. And so learning how to be in my body, and that's goes back to the talk of creating space, learning how to find space in my body. It's a lot more comfortable for me to be in the place of contraction, of holding, and it feels safer. I still, in Shavasana, I always have something on top of me, a hand over my heart or my chest. I'm learning how to open up, but it's hard, it's scary. And so my ACA sponsor right now is so helpful, helping me learn to prioritize feeling safe and grounded within myself. And the more I follow those seeds of feeling grounded and safe, while combined with connecting to my recovery communities and connecting to my higher power, the more I'm able to let go of that holding and contraction and enter the flow of energy, the flow of consciousness. And it's I have it's so so I think of this, there's the Joseph Campbell quote of follow your bliss and doors will open that you never knew were there. And I really relate to that right now, is just taking the next action, following the next step. I would say my recovery right now program revolves a lot on prayer, which is something that doesn't come naturally to me. And it's, when I say it revolves around a lot on prayer, it's not like I don't feel like I know how to pray or who I'm praying to. But part of that is learning how to create the God of my own understanding. I say the first three steps a lot. So for an ACA, say like I'm powerless over my trauma, and then willing to connect to a higher power, and then beginning to make a relationship with that higher power. And so a lot of times that relationship comes in the form of taking an action. I get really stuck on trying to so my patterns of belief, or not patterns, or my habitual patterns that I grew up with, or before I found recovery, were kind of prioritizing the mind, prioritizing the intellect, trying to figure out what to do. In college, one of my majors was economics. I have no interest in econ. I mean, I tried anyways. Finances and money are a different thing. Anyway, but I did this major because I thought that's what I should be doing. I thought that's what would create stability and safety in my life. And it was supported by the culture around me, but yet it was disconnecting from myself, from my power within. And so now I'm really learning that anytime that I'm doing something because I think I should do it, I try to pause and connect to myself and say no. That's another thing in my recovery right now. I'm trying to disappoint more people and not disappoint myself. Because my focus is so much more comfortable for me to be thinking what other people's needs are, rather than thinking what my own needs are. So when I connect with people, I want to connect with people from a place of compassion and groundedness, rather than from a place of being flighty or resentment, or just not my center. And so, for example, one of my family members whom I love very much, and we've worked, my sister, we've worked, she's here, but we've worked a lot in recovery together, and I feel so grateful for her relationship. And yet at the same time, I've noticed a pattern of we're both working through childhood trauma, and both, but don't really have the language to connect yet, or to connect to each other while still staying present. I think family of origin, we have similar trauma, different, but it can activate each other. And so for this past year, I've been trying to show up for her. She's been going through some hard things, and while doing so, I've been realizing I've been disconnecting from myself. And so I'm pausing on that communication with her, but I reached out and just shared with her that I love her so much, and I'm noticing this pattern that we're in, and I want to connect with you at a place when I'm feeling grounded. And there's some other things too, but just an example of realizing that any relationships in my professional and personal life that don't come from a place of being grounded are going to create some tension down the line. And so I'm trying to make my circles a little smaller now, because it's so I can't avoid myself. It's so easy to avoid what's going on inside. So programmed to tune in to my students or my family or my friends. And so learning how to be with myself. In the past 2 years, I've been struggling with chronic pain and migraines. And while that is frustrating to some extent, it also really feels like wisdom that's coming up, and guidance as I'm learning how to be with myself, or how to listen to myself. It's and how to pray, because when I'm having a migraine, I've now found some tools and remedies and medications to help with them a little bit more. They're still, it's still rough, but when I'm having a migraine, I really have to just like scream and connect and get out expression that has been held for a while. And so like it gives me a container to sit with myself in the discomfort. Same as being in a yoga class with a teacher, I have that container to sit with myself in the discomfort with the help of each other, with help of the other people in the room. And so pain has become a messenger in that way too, of giving me kind of a container to sit with myself, and giving me a boundary to move up against, to move towards. And in that pain, like as being with the body and with sensation, it changes when I stay with it, when I express it out, when I'm able to breathe and get grounded. So I mentioned before, I teach, I run art programs for children, and I work with horses, and I teach yoga. And so those three things, horses, art, and yoga, are what I need to be with, to stay the practices I need the most. And so that's how I've come into professional life with them. When I graduated college, I just didn't know what to do. And so just started sharing what helped me. And what to say? So, but at the same time, it's trying to find that balance between giving and receiving. So between my own practices and teaching, and also part of that is learning to kind of go with the flow and not be rigid. And so some days that might mean that my practices of connecting to myself include more movement or more connecting with another human, if that helps support it. Other days, my practices may include more being silent, being with myself, exploring stillness. And stillness in the meditation position for me still kind of is kind of activating and triggering. But one of my intentions now is learning to build a relationship with what triggers me. And so with that stillness, I've found that like sometimes I can sit in it for a minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, other times for just a breath. And so again, shifting the mindset away from having an expectation that that my prayer or that my recovery practice should look a certain way, and moving into kind of the experiential aspect of it. In my grad program right now, studying depth psychology and creativity, it provides a container for using art as a form of research, and art as any way of an expression. And so for some days that art could be my prayer, other days that art could be actual physical art, writing, or how to teach. Both of the programs that are really holding me right now, ACA and my school program, are both also groups that I connected with while in Recovery 2.0 retreat. So I found, and so so just goes back to kind of show me just following the seed, following the next thread, the next step, and trusting that things will open up. Right now, I feel a lot of what I'm struggling with is learning to be in relationship with other people, of like close relationships, whether that's intimacy and romantic relationships, or just learning how to share more with people vulnerably, but and stay with myself. So whether that's with therapists or with friends or with family. And if I start thinking about it too much, I can spiral out and get activated. And so but also I practice not like pushing my old patterns away, because I find that when I like want to push things away or judge it, then it'll come back more. And so letting that, those past desires be here, with the same as letting the new desires or my evolving desires right now of learning to be with myself in in being with my energy, like with my with life, with energy. So I'm just thinking of this another form that is really helpful for my recovery practices is a somatic practice. And so listening to where the breath is in my body and then going there. And so as a yoga teacher, in classes, I often bring people into breath work, from breathing into the belly, into the rib cage, into the chest, which I find helpful some of the times, but other times when I try to do that on my own practice, I'll find resistance. And so, for example, so if I feel the breath in my chest, going to the chest and being with that, where the breath wants to go, and trusting in the intelligence of the body, as there is so much wisdom within ourselves. And I find that wisdom a lot with horses too. Horses are prey animals, and so they're to survive in the wild. They're very aware of their surroundings, and to have that awareness and that expression, they're congruent with their inner and outer emotions, meaning so what they feel, they'll express. Humans and myself, I feel like it's much easier for me to feel one thing and express another thing. And so learning to be congruent with my emotions and my actions, it can be really vulnerable at times, but it's something I'm practicing. And so that starting that practice, so bringing a somatic practice in is helpful, as then I'm able to, if I listen to myself, and then I'm able to express it out. And so like if I'm feeling scared or tense, giving myself a hug. If I'm feeling open, like doing a movement that helps open myself up. And then I've noticed that when I'm able to be with myself, it's easier to take that next step, next action, next connection. And I'm just going to look at my notes, making sure that I have I'm connecting on different points. So another thing in my recovery right now is building my toolbox. And so I have so many different people and friends and systems that I can connect to when I'm feeling stuck. And so like I work with my sponsor, I have a yoga mentor, have friends that are sober. And when I'm feeling unsure of what path to go in, I'm just reading the chat, so I'll check in with those in a moment because they're about to do some discussion. When I'm feeling unsure is of what action to take next, which is I feel a lot, is reaching out to someone or some practice in my toolbox. And those also include like essential oils, weighted blankets, meditations, Sarah Blondin meditations, Recovery 2.0 meditations, music, but just learning how to connect to myself in so many different ways. And I was talking with my sponsor yesterday and just getting frustrated with like the parts of myself that feel so broken, and noticing that sometimes often when I connect to people, it's like it comes from a place of sometimes like I just find myself like I'm still like really navigating the first 3 steps of the 12 steps. And I want to be past that. But my sponsor was helping remind me that these broken parts are how, like, learning how to be with them is what allows me to connect with others and share my recovery with others in the ACA and AA and R2O programs. And so that's really learning that now, and trying to take it slow, and so any shortcuts with healing are not actually real. Like they'll create more tension in the end. And so just taking it step by step and being with myself and really protecting myself, my energy and my body at all costs. So just learning how to prioritize what it's like to be with myself. And that has been the most helpful way for me to create my morning practice and sadhana. As being part of this community, I've been working so long for so many years trying to create a sadhana, a morning practice, and I go in and out of it. But what helps me the most is learning how to be with myself in all the different forms. And so not having it look like one thing. And maybe down the road, I will have a practice that is on my yoga mat every morning. But right now, my morning practice is just like connecting to presence. And so connecting to my energy, kind of release, getting the discharging my energy in whatever ways I can, and showing up, and then asking for guidance, and trusting that will come. A lot of times my prayers right now, I'm yelling at God. Like saying, I don't really swear that much. Also, sometimes I get overwhelmed with swearing. I have some of my good friends that are here. I've expressed that to them. So thanks guys for sticking with me. But I've noticed that when I pray to God, I'm like swearing at God a lot. And my sponsor like really encourages me to just like to do that, and saying that like God wants me to be honest with my emotions. And so if that means like being angry at God, at life, then allow that to be here, and to learning how to be honest with myself and feel safe to express, and encouraging myself, giving myself the support and compassion to do so. And so with that, I think I will wrap it up.